everyone. This is Juanita Kapp from Meticulous Moments, and I am streaming here from Texas today. And I'm so excited to see that the Meticulous Moments community is growing and that we are really busy with community work out there in various forms, from creating martial arts syllabus to the Hall of Fame to the different dojos that are being put together, a lot of collaborations in the film world as well. So I just want to give a shout out to each and every single person that's been a guest, everyone that's a follower, everyone that shares the posts and that really get down to it and help. Thank you for your time, your effort, your expertise, and for helping us build. Because Meticulous Moments has always been about community upliftment through leadership development. And with me today, I have a leader of note. I have a legend with me in this Zoom room, and he is none other than Randy Couture. Welcome, Randy.
Well, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. It's so good to have you here. And I know you have a busy schedule. You've got lots of things coming up. So I just want to thank you for making the time to spend with us today so that we can create some energy here, that we can create some content that will connect some dots for others and that will help them and, enrich them and enlighten and uplift them. So let's get started. Randy, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Wow. I grew up in a smaller suburb, small town, I guess, about 45 miles north of Seattle, Washington. Graduated high school in 1981 and spent 6 years in the Army. Started my family very early. And by the time I got out of the Army and went to college at Oklahoma State, I had 2 children at that time. I have 3 children now. I've got 3 grandchildren now. So all good. Obviously, 6 years in the Army, 4 years in college wrestling at Oklahoma State. And then I got hired at Oregon State to coach wrestling. And I coached wrestling at the Division I level for about 7 years until I started fighting. And I quit my coaching job to pursue fighting full time in 1997. I fought for 14 years, retired from fighting in 2011. In the early 2000s, I had my first acting gig, Cradle to the Grave, with DMX and Jet Li. And so kind of juggled both of those balls for a while, but nothing really ever got in the way of fighting. I wouldn't take a movie that was going to take me out of a camp or away from a fight. Fighting was where my bread was buttered for 14 years. When I retired in 2011, I could jump headlong into pursuing acting jobs. And by that time, I'd built a foundation for wounded combat veterans called Extreme Couture GI Foundation. Also ran the chapter of MVP, Emerging Vets and Players, out of my gym in Las Vegas as well. Started a training center here in Las Vegas in 2007, the Extreme Couture Mixed Martial Arts Training Center. And that's still going strong. My son is running the gym now. Ryan fought for Bellator for most of his career, for about 12 years. He retired in 2020 from fighting and started his family. That's 2 of my 3 grandchildren, Rhett and Ellis. And Ryan's running the gym now at Extreme Couture. So things are going very well.
It sounds like you're a very blessed individual, because I always tell people children are a blessing. And I can't wait to have my own grandchildren one day. I think it's just amazing to have grandkids. There's a joke that we have in South Africa. It's just, they're just joking around, but they always say, why do grandparents and children, and grandchildren love each other so much? And then the punchline is because they have a common enemy. So because the grandparents always allow the things that the parents say no to, but that is just, they just make fun of that. Sometimes that happens, and I hear a life that was full of goal setting, a life that was full of reaching those goals, perseverance, determination. You mentioned that although you were doing the acting, nothing could keep you from the cage. So tell us about your fighting years, the 14 years that you fought and trained. What was the best part of all those years that you gave up? Because that's a lot of discipline right there.
Yeah, well, that journey started for me as a 10-year-old walking out on a wrestling mat for the first time. I wrestled in junior high and high school. first opportunity for me to really settle in and set some goals. By the time I was a junior in high school, I sat down with my mom and said, "Hey, I want to be a state champion next year. It's my last year in wrestling at the high school level." And she helped me. She supported me through that. I got to quit my job, and she paid my car insurance and my gas money during wrestling season, and ultimately achieved that goal. I was a state champion in 1981 in Washington State for Linwood High School. And I think once I had that template on how to go about setting that goal and achieving that, then I could use that as a cookie cutter down the line as I set my goals in other areas, other wrestling areas, and then ultimately, I ended up in fighting. Not some place I ever expected to be, but saw a bunch of other wrestlers like Don Fry and Mark Coleman competing in the sport of mixed martial arts. They called it no holds barred back then. And was immediately intrigued by it and was lucky enough to get in back then. It was a little bit different. You filled out an application. There was no amateur ranks. There was no, you send in an application and say, "Hey, I want to fight with you guys." And
Yeah.
it was,
Put
it
me
was a
in the
bit different
pool.
back then. Yeah. So,
Let's find someone to fight with. That's a good old days, I believe, because a lot of things have changed since then in the sport. And I want to ask you, how much of a difference do you see now from when you were fighting and how the sport has now developed and evolved, but also changed in certain ways?
yeah. Well, when I was fighting, they were giving away most of those tickets, to fill those arenas and get butts in seats. We were largely misunderstood. Most people thought we were crazy and criminals. Who would get in a cage and fight another guy? I mean, that guy must be nuts. And the Bob Meyerowitz and the company back then ran towards regulation. They created unified rules. They
Right.
started. They really get into weight classes. They did the first shows with a weight class. They had lightweights and heavyweights.
Yeah.
Anybody under 200 pounds was considered a lightweight. Anybody over 200 pounds was considered a heavyweight. So I obviously fought in the heavyweight division for the
Yeah.
first half of my career. It wasn't until Zuffa bought the brand and bought the company in 2001. They embraced the unified rules, ran towards regulation, and created rounds, a round system, and a 10-point must system, and so many of those things that we were used to from all the years of boxing.
Right.
Um, and so things changed. The weight classes, they started adding weight classes. Now there's, I think, 8 or 10 weight classes and a plethora of women's weight classes as well. So the sport has evolved a lot. It's become a little more corporate.
Mm.
The UFC's wearing uniforms and stuff like that. You know, Back when I started, you could wear a gi or not wear a gi, wear boxing gloves or no boxing gloves, shoes. It was a bit wilder back then. There were
Yeah.
only four real rules on the books. You couldn't eye gouge, you couldn't fish hook, you couldn't strike to the throat, you couldn't
Yeah.
strike to the groin. Just
Yeah.
about everything else was fair game. You could do whatever the heck you wanted.
It
So
goes.
yeah, obviously, it's turned into quite a hybrid sport now. You take all the
Yes.
combative sports from the Olympics and you roll them into one event, and you have mixed martial arts nowadays.
That's right. That's right. It's like a big all stars now. All stars tournament. It's not like going to the nationals, and doing your style of karate and kata. It's all stars. And yeah, the rules have definitely changed. But I think it's good to reflect on how, the origins and where it came from, because there's a lot of people that's going to be watching this that are going to say, yes, I remember that. You could go in with the gloves or without the gloves, or you could go in with shoes, or you could go with the gi or without a gi. And it has definitely evolved, but it's always been popular. Since I can remember, it's been very, very popular. And I really strongly believe that the difference between the winner and the person, I wouldn't say the loser, I would say the person that was not doing their best today, or on that specific day. I think it's a mental, because they both train the same, they go on the same diets, they're in the same physique kind of state. How important was it for you, or how important do you think it is to believe in yourself when you step into that ring? How important is it to mentally prepare yourself, see yourself win that specific match?
Well, I think it's a huge piece of the puzzle. I felt fortunate and blessed that wrestling for the national team for the United States and Greco-Roman wrestling for all those years, we had a sports psychologist. I learned some of those tools and modalities to control your inner dialogue, that crazy roommate, that voice we all have, or most of us have anyway. Frame things in a positive way that are going to keep you on task and keep you doing what you trained to do in that match or in that fight. So I felt like I drug a lot of those mental skills into MMA when I transitioned from wrestling to fighting. I had a lot of good fortune and was very fortunate to have had that experience and that exposure. Not a lot of the athletes do. So I felt like they definitely gave me a leg up. In a volatile sport like mixed martial arts, you know, any given day you win or loss. I mean, my fight record is 19-11. Everybody talks about 6 world championships, so that means I lost it at least 5 times. And the truth is, I lost it all 6. So it wasn't always about winning; it was about how you dealt with the adversity of a loss, and that's what's most important. So there's where resilience and character come into play.
Exactly. Having that good sportsmanship and saying, you know, sometimes I'm the nail and sometimes I'm the hammer. And I learned something, you know, if I didn't win today, at least I leave that ring learning something. Now I know there's so many things going through your mind when you're fighting. And I want to ask you, is there a point in the fight where you stop hearing those voices, or we used to stop hearing the voices of everybody screaming what to do, where to go, you know, how to approach
I don't
that
think you
next
hear
ball?
any of it.
You didn't hear it?
No, you're in the tunnel.
Yeah.
You know, you're in that flow state, the mushin, the Zen state of being in the
Right.
flow. Everything slows down. You see things clearly. The noises, the crowd, and all of that is a dull roar. On occasion, you'll hear your corner man, and that's generally because you're used to hearing his voice in the training environment. You should have that same guy yelling at you in practice that's going to be yelling at you in the corner on fight night. So you're used to hearing that voice and picking that voice up out of the chaos that is the training environment, and then the chaos that is fight night out in that arena. Your eyes outside. That's what those corner guys are. They see things on the outside that you, in the heat of the moment, can't decipher sometimes. And so, having those key phrases, things aren't going your way. Have that phrase or that word that gets you back on track, gets you back doing the things you trained to do. It could be as simple as move your feet or breathe.
Yeah.
But it gets you to refocus and recenter and get back about the task of trying to win the fight.
Absolutely, and that's a tough thing to do. It's tough to step in there, and I've seen major comebacks. I've seen fights because I love to watch MMA. You know, as much as I can on the channels, and really, I've seen comebacks. I've seen people that are so tired in the second round, and then just all of a sudden, it's like they get that second breath, something clicks, and they end up winning that fight. It always amazes me, human nature, how strong we really are when we dig deep and when we really, as you say, go into that zone state, that flow state. I think that's the perfect place to be, is in that state where you're focused and you know exactly what you want to do next. And it's
I think
almost like time slows.
that's the state we're all trying to achieve. And when things aren't going your way, sometimes you get discombobulated or you get caught in a technique or something that takes you out of that mode. You're doing your best to get back in that mode, and that takes practice. You know, you have to practice those mental skills in the training environment so that they're sharp and you're firing on all cylinders, not just physically but mentally when you walk out of that tunnel and walk up into that cage to compete. I've seen that fight 100 times before I ever walked out of that tunnel. Visualized it, seen it every which way with that one common denominator. I always got my hand raised at the end. And learning to control that internal dialogue, give it those affirmations and those positive things to say. You control that dialogue. That dialogue does not control you. And so many folks don't recognize that. They don't realize that. They buy into all the crazy stuff that roommate will say. Nobody in their right mind would talk to you that way to your face and not get punched in the mouth.
That's right.
So recognizing that you control that voice does not control you. Shut it up. Tell it to stop. Give it affirmations and positive things to say, things that you believe are going to help you or put you in a position in that circumstance or situation to win, to be successful. And then it gets in line. It starts going with the program and stops undermining, especially when the pressure gets turned up fight week. You know, the chattering starts. What ifs? This, what if that? What if that? What if that? And you have to shut that off.
That's
It's
right.
only going to create nervous energy and force you to spend energy that you may need in that cage when it's time to win.
Absolutely, absolutely. Those what ifs. They're like little jackals that want to ruin the whole field. You know, they want to set it all right. Just put the what ifs aside and say, I am going to do it. I've heard fighters say that they visualize that, but I've never heard them speaking about stilling that inner voice. That's very, very interesting. And that's good advice for all the fighters that are watching this with us, you know, joining this with us when they watch this is train that mind, not just that body, and also spiritually, you know, get yourself on that place. Energy is very important. I believe in a lot of good energy, and I believe in believing that you are unstoppable. And I wanted to ask you, isn't it almost a relief because fight week is so much, there's so much pressure, isn't it almost a relief to finally just step into the cage so that you can fight?
Yeah, that's how I was gauged if I was in shape and ready to go. Because about that, generally most of my camps were 10 weeks long, and you get to that last 2 to 3 weeks of camp. Most of the hard work is done. The hay is in the barn, so to speak, and
Yeah,
that's when you're sick of training. It's like, damn it, I'm
right.
ready for the fight to be here. And that's when that switch happens, and you're sick of going to practice and preparing to solve that problem, because that's what fighting is, problem solving.
That's right.
um, then I know I'm ready to go. And so I got to, get through those last week or 2 or 3 sometimes, stay focused, stick with the plan, do all the things I need to do, make sure I get my rest and recovery in, especially in that last week,
Yeah.
so that my legs are under me. If you listen to that crazy roommate, you say, oh, what if you get tired? And you'll be out running sprints in the parking lot, worried that you're going to get tired in that fight. And then
Right.
you'll go back and look and recognize why you were tired in the fight, because you were out doing sprints the week of the damn fight. You should have
Exactly.
stuck with the plan and had confidence in your plan, and not
Yeah.
let that crazy roommate talk you into doing something you didn't need to do.
That's right. And let me tell you, I know that crazy roommate can be very convincing. I know that for a fact.
You'll be
I
an
would,
asshole is what he can be.
that's right. Absolutely true. We need to just take the broom and sweep him out and limit his ability to influence us. I remember when we had the gradings, it would build up to the gradings for the karate, and they would tell us who we are going to fight. And by the time, 2 or 3 days before the grading, I just wished for the grading to be there because I just wanted, to step in that ring because I was ready. And then by the time I would step on that mat, I would almost feel like relieved because now I'm here. Now we can fight. Let's see what I've learned. So that's very interesting for you to share that. I have memorable gradings. I want to ask you, as a legend in the MMA world, with the wrestling, with the coaching, and we'll talk about the military as well. What is your most memorable fight?
Boy, I've had a few. I think that very first fight with Vitor Belfort, where nobody gave me a snowball's chance in hell of beating him at that time. He was smoking everybody. I think he'd had 4 fights with an aggregate time of about 3 minutes for all 4 of those fights. He was just walking through everybody. Um, I was an older athlete when I started. I mean, I didn't start fighting till I was 33, almost 34 years old. And here's this young stud, in his early 20s, just tearing people up. So I think that set the tone and the tempo for my entire career, that particular fight. But it was that same story with Chuck Liddell the first time I fought Chuck, the same thing with Tito Ortiz, the same thing with Tim Sylvia coming out of retirement at 44 to fight Tim.
Yeah.
Everybody thought I was crazy. He's, 6'8", a giant guy. And,
Yes.
even the Lesnar fight, I didn't win that fight, but I felt like I was on my way to winning that fight. And
Yeah.
it was just, he's a massive guy, and a lot of people thought I was crazy to even get in the cage with him. But I had a strong belief I had a good chance of winning that fight.
Absolutely, absolutely. And signature moves or something that you really, that's your go-to. What was your go-to move? Did you like the guillotine? Let's tell the audience what was your favorite.
Yeah, I don't know if I had a signature move. I certainly had a style that encompassed a lot of wrestling, and certainly a lot of Greco-Roman wrestling. It's a very
Yeah,
unique style in the United States. It's not a terribly popular style. It's something I got exposed to in the military, and I
right.
won my first world championship at the military world championships, the SISM world championships in 1982, or not 82, 88 rather. um, in Palermo, Sicily. So Greco is a style of wrestling that's very popular in Eastern Europe, especially. And it's an upright posture. It's like judo without the gi, and
Uh-huh.
translated very, very well to fighting. So that first Belfort fight, using that collar tie and dirty boxing, it kind of was born that night, and everybody started calling it dirty boxing in that fight. I guess the submission I found myself in the most was that arm triangle. I think I had that 3 or 4 times throughout my career. That was just, as a wrestler, we're very good at headlocks and hanging on people's heads and working people's heads. So that was a tactic and a technique that I found myself in a lot.
Awesome. That is very good to know. It strikes a light in my mind because we learn in martial arts training in karate, if you can, or jiu-jitsu, if you control the head, you control the body. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
very, very good move to execute there as well. And I wanted to ask you, because I was curious about the military. I know you were a sergeant. I wanted to ask you, did the military training also, assist you later in life? How did that impact your journey?
Well, I think there's an attention to detail that
Yeah,
comes from wearing that uniform, from going through basic training and advanced training. You learn to really pay attention to detail, and that the details matter.
yeah,
You learn to and I learned this already from wrestling. You learn by the numbers in a very particular way. They simplify it for everybody so that anybody can learn the things that you need to learn to survive in a combat zone if you end
hmm,
up in one. So I don't know that, other than that confidence that I developed in myself, wrestling for the Army, because I spent most of my enlistment wrestling for the Army. That was where that first world championship, that military championship in Palermo happened. And so I don't think coming out of high school and joining the Army, I thought wrestling was done for me, frankly.
yeah,
Little did I know there were 5 million soldiers stationed in Central Europe. My first duty station was West Germany, and I ended up wrestling again. And I think wrestling there against a bunch of other soldiers from all over the country, the United States, and then from all over the world, I developed confidence that I could compete on the national and international stage. And then I think when I got out of the Army and went to college to Oklahoma State, that leveled up one more time. It was all about winning, and I believe I developed the confidence that I could win at that level while I wrestled at Oklahoma State. It's one of the best wrestling programs in the country.
fantastic to build up that experience. To have that practice, that is absolutely amazing. And I spoke to the White Buffalo, Francois Botha. He's a good friend of mine from South Africa. He's friends with Mike Tyson. They fought, I think it was 1995, and I think in round five, Francois got knocked out. And I said, Francois, I interviewed him. I said, Francois, now tell me about this friendship that you have with Mike Tyson. He said, oh, Juanita, we used to train at the same gym, and they would bring people for us to spar, and we would knock them all out. You just see they're dragging this guy out, and then they're dragging that guy out. So I wanted to ask you, Tito Ortiz and the other fighters that you fought, did you make friends with them? Did you guys become friends along the way? What was it like in
Yeah,
those days?
well, we're still friends to this day. Friends
Oh,
with Chuck. I'm friends with Tito. Friends with. There isn't one of those guys that I don't get along with. Um, you
yeah.
know, uh,
That's life.
yeah, I think that's the way it should be. That's the martial arts part of it. It's not,
That's right.
most of this chatter is just psychological warfare. It's not
That's
real
right.
animosity. It's not real anger. You're trying to get that guy and get under his skin and make him think about anything but the tactics and techniques he's going to need to beat it. And that's what
That's
guys
right.
do. They run their head to get you frustrated. And if you allow that to happen, then they're winning.
Yeah.
Before you ever stepped in that cage, they're winning. So you can't allow those things to get under your skin. See it for what it is. It's a tactic. It's
Yeah.
not real. Now there's a line there. You can't
Yeah.
cross the line.
Yeah.
You start insulting somebody's family and stuff like that, and we've seen that
Coming
happen.
into the character now.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
There's
but
limits. Absolutely. I'm thinking of something now, as you were saying, that the psychological warfare. I worked for someone in South Africa many years ago in the corporate space, and his daughter was also working there in the office. And she said, my dad has this knack. of really climbing, under your skin. I said, oh, what does he do? She said, no, every Friday night we have game night. She says, but he gets under my skin from Monday to Thursday. And by the time I get to the games on Friday, I don't even want to play anymore. And it's something like that, right?
Yeah, it sounds similar. Yes. What part of South Africa are you from?
I was raised in South Africa in the Pretoria, Johannesburg area. We also lived up
Okay.
near Venda, a place called Lutrichak by the Soutpansberg Mountains. But then after my studies, I moved to Queenstown, planted a church there, and COVID hit, and then the church is closed. So I took everything online. And I remember saying to God, oh my goodness, now I don't have a pulpit. I can't look after my flock. What is happening? And the one morning I woke up and I just felt like the Lord said, well, I'm taking that pulpit and I'm replacing it with a global one. You need to start doing everything online. So that's exactly what I did. Everything went online. So yeah, I love the countryside because that is where my roots are.
Mm.
And I know there's a lot of fighters from South Africa. I forget Temba's name. I know he's a very good fighter. His last name Temba is a very good fighter. And of course, I followed Dricus du Plessis. I don't know if you've seen him fight before.
Hmm. I spent some time in Cape Town.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Shot Scorpion King 2 in Cape Town for 6 weeks and had a blast. It was an amazing experience. Made a very, very good friend, Quentin Chong, who runs Dragon Power Muay Thai. Him and Winston, his brother Winston. And Quentin actually came over and lived with me and stayed with me for over a year. He cornered me for some of my fights, and I learned a lot about Muay Thai training and working with Quentin Chong from South Africa.
Fantastic. Well, Cape Town is the best place to see because that is a tourist destination of note. There's the Table Mountain and there's the most beautiful
Mhm.
beaches. And I'm sure you enjoyed the vineyards and the cuisine. South African people are very friendly. I hope you had a good experience with, traveling there because it's really beautiful. Did you see the animals? Did you go on a
Oh
safari?
yes, absolutely. I went to Kruger, spent three
Oh,
days in
that's a good
Kruger.
one.
Was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a great time. Did go to wine country there and went up tabletop and all of that. Stayed in Camps Bay, which
Oh,
felt a
beautiful.
lot like Malibu. It was very very beautiful. In fact, when I was over there, the Springboks won the World Cup in rugby.
Springboks,
and,
rugby.
and the town was up for grabs. It was amazing. Everybody was partying and going crazy when the Springboks won the World Cup that year. So that was
That's a
a
significant year.
great time to be there.
Absolutely. You picked the best time because South Africans and rugby, I mean, you'll never separate those two. We love our Springbok team. There's so many amazing players and we love sport. Cricket too. Cricket is also very big. Now, I wanted to ask you, Randy, we learn lessons when we step in the ring. We learn lessons when we step out of the ring. I always tell people the dojo to my kids and I, when we started training, almost a decade ago, it became our second home. The Kiyoshi, the sensei, wasn't just there to teach us kata and fighting. He was a mentor. He's still a mentor to us. And there's some valuable lessons that I learned in the ring, in the MMA ring at the dojo, but also after training, just sitting and talking with my martial arts family. What's one of the most important lessons you learned as you were in and out of the ring, meeting people, forming those bonds?
Well, I mean, you're only as good as the people you're going to be training with, the people you're stepping on the mat with every single
Yeah,
day. And so you want to attract those like-minded people that have the same values and the same passion for the sport that you have. And that was
yes.
certainly the case with me through wrestling. And my coaches were very important people in my life because I didn't really have a father. I grew up with a single parent household. My mom raised three of us by herself. So those coaches filled that void for me. If
That's
I
right.
needed a kick in the butt, they were the ones that step up and do that. And if I needed a pat on the back and some confirmation or affirmation, then they were the ones that were doing that as well. So all the way through junior high, certainly with Coach K-Spear, Coach McAvoy in high school, Coach Winter in the Army, Coach Burnett, Coach Say, Coach Smith in college. Those coaches were very, very important in my journey for sure. But so are my teammates.
That's
They
right.
were the ones that pushed you to the absolute limit and helped you find those barriers when your brain starts chirping, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, but you're not done yet. And you have
That's
to
right.
keep going. and push that wall, that barrier back, and get that voice to shut up and
That's
keep
right.
pushing your body further. You realize very quickly you can go a lot longer than you think you can.
That's right. I agree with you 100%. And that's a good piece of information to put out there because I think something that sometimes lacks a lot these days is perseverance. We live in a very comfortable society and, everything has changed. Everything is fast, instant gratification. But training, guys, and getting to that level takes years and years of dedication, practice, discipline, getting there and having someone chasing you the whole time and saying, no, you're going to catch your second breath. You're not tired. Just keep going. And let me tell you what happens. You do catch that second breath. And when you've caught that second breath, you can keep going and going and going, whether you're running or doing jiu-jitsu drills or, doing your kata. It's amazing how when we override our brains, how we really discover what we're capable of.
Yeah, they have to shut that brain off.
Have to. Don't overthink. I used to go to the dojo and the Kyoshi would see me in my routine very fast. I came from work and I would have to do this, and this because I would have to rush back. And he would always say, leave it at the door, whatever it is. He said, this is your time. Now you have your own pace. There's no rush. And
Yep.
by the time I would go out of the dojo, by golly, let me tell you, those things didn't even matter anymore. I was on a whole other level. And that was his wisdom that he imparted. Now, I want to ask you two more questions, Randy. I want to ask you any injuries that you sustained. What was the worst injury? Did you feel the pain when
I
you had?
fractured. I fractured this orbit. I caught an
Oh,
elbow in the Rico Rodriguez fight and fractured my orbit, and it
ow.
trapped the nerve and the muscle for the eye, so the eye wouldn't function, and the whole world tilted like
Oh,
that. Um, Obviously, I had to verbally tap in that fight, and it was a fight I was winning, which sucked. But fifth round, he caught me with a good solid elbow and fractured, blew out that lemur papricia, that thin bone that separates your sinuses from your eye socket. So that was probably the most serious injury I sustained. Broken arm in the Gonzaga fight, checking a kick. But other than that, the cauliflower ears and the cuts and all the other stuff, they heal up very,
yeah,
very quickly. It took about 6 months of ocular therapy to get over the eye injury and a surgery. They had to put a
yeah.
patch in over the fracture and release the nerve and the muscle. And then I had to retrain the eye. Thankfully, it wasn't
Oh,
damaged bad enough.
exercises.
Yeah, exactly. So as the
Okay.
nerve and muscle were stretched and damaged a little bit, but through retraining, through ocular therapy, I was able to get all my vision back. That eye's a little weaker than the right eye. Thankfully, I shoot with my right eye, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, it would have been a disaster if it was your right eye. Yeah, that's one thing you got. I mean, what can you train here, right? You can train the race, but that one just caught you at that moment at a bad place. But I'm so happy to hear that they were able to restore that and that, you could nurse it back to health.
Yeah,
Wisdom is so important. And it's good to speak to the legends out there like yourself and to hear the words of wisdom that, you've been there, you've done that, you're still imparting into people's lives. Is there something that you can relate to the audience today? Just a word of wisdom for a fighter out there. Maybe there's someone seeking some information, or maybe they have questions. What can you tell them that you feel in your heart today to share with them?
I think a lot of things roll very easily off the tongue. People say things all the time. Oh, I want to be a world champion. I want to do this. But drawing that map from where you're at right now and walking that walk to get where it is, that destination, that place you said you wanted to go, is a whole different animal. And that starts with passion. If you aren't passionate and genuinely want to do that, want that with everything in your body, everything in your being, then you're probably not going to make the sacrifices and do the things that you have to do to get there. There's the downside to that. My family, my wife or kids are the ones that suffered because I was off chasing those dreams and trying to accomplish those things and giving up time with those people that thankfully loved me and had my back and believed that I was able to achieve those things. And that's important. Bringing that team together, not just those teammates, but those people that are in your life that share your dream. that want to help you get there and achieve that, get to that destination. Don't forget to enjoy the journey along the way. We have a tendency as humans to focus on that destination and forget about all the small steps and all the beautiful accomplishments and things that we do and experience along the way. And many times you'll find that those were more enjoyable than the actual, you know, arrival at that destination or accomplishing that thing you set out to accomplish. And so don't forget about the journey, but it starts with passion and being willing to make the sacrifices that you need to make.
Absolutely, absolutely incredible advice right there. I agree with you. That journey is so valuable. The memories, the nostalgia when you think back about the first time you went here and the first time you celebrated that win with your family and the first time your children did something and the first time your grandchildren arrived, that very first grandbaby. Those are the things that we hold on to. I agree. Life is so fast paced these days. Everybody's rushing, rushing, rushing. And I think we need to slow it down. So I always tell people be present in that moment and to make the most of that moment because tomorrow will come. It's
Now is
gonna
all we have. Now is all we have. It's a very powerful word, one of the most powerful words in the world. Right now is all you have. What you've already done is already etched in stone. You can't change that. And tomorrow isn't promised. You don't
That's
know when your last breath will come. So you better live now and make the most of it.
me. Amen to that. Absolutely been such a wonderful, wonderful time with you. I appreciate it so, so much from the Meticulous Moments community, from the MAM group. Congratulations on your induction. I'm sending your trophy this week. Thank you so much. It was such an honor to induct you and to interview you.
Thank you. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, sir. And then